Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our daily word. It's the last day of May, May 31st. Glad you could join me this beautiful last day of May for our daily word. Thank you for rejoining me, I should say, after a week hiatus of not having our daily word. And so hopefully you will continue to join me as we continue our daily conversation through the word and what it means for us and how it applies to our daily lives as we live them. I had therapy this morning and got out late and then got caught in that traffic on 4th Avenue and State Route 47. And so if you can avoid that, you probably should avoid that. And so I'm still at home this morning, just got my clothes changed before I head out for the day. So for our scripture for today, I have chosen for us this one verse that I think is probably universal for us, a familiar, needed verse that we often repeat. I think we repeat it, in difficult times when we're trying to figure out, I think we're trying to figure out who Jesus is. So the scripture is from Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8, very simple. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And I think we often use this scripture in our searching, in our conquest, to figure out, who are you, God? Who are you, Lord? What do you need me to do in my life? And when we are in the midst of chaos, and it makes sense, right? When we're in the midst of chaos, and we're in the midst of ups and downs and all the things that happen in our lives, when we're in the midst of all of that, it's good to have this scripture in our heads. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So no matter what happens in my life, we have that to fall back on. And I think that's good for us. But then there is this piece about it that I think draws for me at least some caution for us. It's true that the scripture says that Jesus stays the same, but you and I haven't stayed the same. We've grown, we've changed, we've gotten older. Our views of life have changed. The church has changed. It doesn't stay the same. I read just early this morning a report where the post-pandemic church attendance is down on average of about 30%. I think that's probably true. And so now we look at church in a whole new way, with attendance being horrible. In my mind, at least, horrible. And I don't, frankly, know what to do about it, how it really ever will change for us. But here's the piece of this that I think is important for us as we reflect upon and think about this text. If we're not growing, if we're not changing, if our faith isn't evolving, if we're not seeing God in the midst of our lives, if we're not doing the kind of work that we need to do, that God can then unfold these new images of faith before us, then we're probably in a pretty static place in our own faith. And so the question, who are you, Lord, is that question of a lifetime that we need to ask over and over and over again. And I think that query, who are you, Lord, that question, then frees us up for God and Jesus to come to our lives over and over again, remembering when we first met, how we struggled along the way, and what we've learned in the process. And I think that's true, not only in a relationship with Jesus and who God calls us to be, but I think it's true again, in our relationship with each other. I said it on Sunday morning, and I believe this to be true, and I didn't say it well enough. You know, you get done with sermons and you wish you'd have said more than you would have said, or you missed some pieces, and I did. I didn't turn over one page of my notes. I missed saying what I wanted to say, but the work of unity, the work of being in relationship with each other, the work of seeking God's presence in our lives, and this journey that we're on together, where we ask God to show up in our communal life, the lives that we're living together on Sunday morning or Wednesday night or whatever that looks like, that we're asking God to show up in our communal lives again and again and again, remembering when we first met, because I think that's a cool thing, remembering when we first met, our struggles along the road, and we've all had them, and what we learn in the process of being this community of faith. Knowing that we grow and we evolve and we change, and God works in us, and God shapes us, and God moves us, and God calls us to be faithful in all the kinds of things. And the question for us is, what do we do about it? Yesterday, today, and forever, Jesus is the same. But I think with us, in our faith journey, Jesus moves with us, changes with us. Our understandings change. Our idea of who Jesus is for us changes in our lives. And I think for us, you know, in the midst of the chaos that we find ourselves in always, and, you know, it doesn't get any better, right? It's hard. We live in hard, difficult times. We know that it's important for us that we don't just rest on our faith. We don't just rest on it. We don't just say, well, I've arrived. We can't. We just can't. Now, instead, you know, we just continue to grow and to grow and to grow. Hear this again. Remembering when we first met Jesus, remembering when we first met each other, how we've struggled with God along the road, how we struggled together along the road, and then what we've learned in the process of all of that. And you know, as I think about that, I hope, well, it's been my goal for us in our almost 10 years together, that we just found ways to do that, you know. And maybe it's my fault. Well, it is probably. If there's any blame to be laid, it's to me, I guess. That we haven't remembered enough, that we've forgotten that we rely on each other, and to remember, and then to just reflect on what we've learned in the process together. I hope we can continue to do that. I hope we'll find ways to do that anew and refreshed in good and powerful ways. So I hope this is a good word for us today. Thanks for joining me as we start a new time together in our daily word as we plunge ahead into the month of June. So enjoy the beauty of today, because it's a beautiful day. So it's going to be a little warm. Know of God's love, you know, that just sustains us. I hope that together, you and I will remember what we've learned in the process of being together in our faith. And know of my love for all of you. And I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.